Hey Jan, did you know that only 1 in 4 employees feel that feedback helps them perform better? Which actually means that 3/4 of them feel that the feedback that they receive doesn't help them perform better at their job. And that's the whole purpose of feedback.
Yeah, very surprising. However, we know that transforming feedback into really powerful learning opportunities is what is going to create that growth in your personal and professional life. And so let's deep dive into that a little bit more. Like most people want to be accepted for who they are, loved for who they are, and however, most people also want to grow. And the most impactful way that we have found over 20 years of working with teams and leaders is that feedback given at the right time in the right way and received in those circumstances as well is the most powerful way to develop and to grow. And I think in order to make it stick, it has to be delivered in a certain way, but also there is something about receiving it. And that really does depend on the person, their personality, how they like to receive information. And if you want to create a really powerful learning opportunity, you actually have to know that in yourself and communicate that to people who you are going to receive feedback from. If we just think about the introversion, extroversion side of personality, Michelle, like perhaps people with extroversion like to have a bit of to and fro with their feedback, have that conversation, whereas perhaps people with introversion would like to perhaps have it written down ahead of time, being able to reflect on it, thinking about thinking and feeling personality preferences. For the thinkers, they might need to be really objective, logical, like don't beat around the bush. However, the feeling side, they want all of that as well. However, perhaps you want to link it to their personal values, perhaps be a little bit softer in the way in which you deliver it. So it really does depend on the person who is receiving it and their level of self awareness. Is there anything you want to add about that, Michelle, about
Yeah,
what it takes?
Yeah, like it's a real challenge, isn't it? Because a lot of the training that has been undertaken by leaders over the last sort of, 10, 20 years has all been about how you actually give feedback. But equally, there is that flip side about how you receive feedback. And the thing about feedback is that what they're finding is that it doesn't really matter whether it's positive or negative. That is not the key that unlocks better performance. It's actually, does it focus on the task? Is it specific as opposed to just focusing on the person? Because when you say, oh, the way that you treated somebody in that team meeting was shocking or whatever, that's not feedback. That's just a statement that you've made. But so what they're meta-analysis is showing this, it is not only of course it's the quality of the feedback, but it's also the way that you receive back, and it's the frequency. So those employees that receive feedback weekly in a constructive way are more likely to improve their performance long term, and improved performance, better engagement, better return on investment for the organisation, really. So it's not a question of is it positive, negative? You remember they used to talk about the sandwich. You've got to do something positive. Forget about that. This is all about you as a leader being really specific about how you actually give feedback about the task, not about the person. And when we say be specific, it's like, if I had a camera and I was videoing you, could I see it? Could we measure it? Is it actionable? And when you can do that in the spirit of trying to help that person, then you are definitely on the right track. And the person receiving the feedback, are they staying open and curious? Is there an element of truth in it? And of course, it stings. And I might tell a story about that in a moment, about the stinging of feedback. But again, it's what you do with that. Can you stay open and curious? And is there an element of truth? And can I, make the assumption that the person is giving me feedback to help me improve my performance?
Because that's what makes it a powerful learning opportunity. So,
Right.
Michelle, tell me about ineffective feedback and the challenge of ineffective feedback.
Well, the challenge of ineffective feedback is that it really can halt somebody's desire to improve, which was the whole reason for it. Because what happens is when we get that feedback, our brain just sort of reverts to that fight or flight. And we know that, the two biggest motivators are to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And actually receiving feedback in a negative feedback that is ineffectual, because not all negative feedback can be, not all negative feedback is bad. Negative feedback could be corrective feedback. It's sort of part of the language that we use. It's really important. And so it really is important, not only for the deliverer of the feedback to be mindful of being constructive, being specific, but the flip side is the person receiving that. And what is really interesting about this, and this is something that we've started to incorporate into our business a few years ago, and it was more an intuitive thing. The person asking for the feedback says, "Can you give me one specific thing that I could be doing differently or better?" Because people love to give advice. But when you ask for feedback, it's like, "Oh my God, I've got to do this big analysis on, I need to start with the good and end with, all of that." And it just becomes overwhelming. So
Yeah.
keep it simple and make it specific. And then you are more likely, like, give me a tip on what I could be doing better. And it's almost like, the tension drops out of it then, because, oh, yeah, I can give you a tip. This is what I think. And so we have found in our practice that has been such a beautiful shift in creating more effective feedback, not only for the person delivering it, but for the person receiving it.
Yeah. And also, like when we think about why feedback is often not utilized effectively in learning opportunities, is because part of it is just the way in which the brain is wired. It's wired, like to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And if someone is in a state of not being, like highly stressed and things like that, they are not going to receive the gift of feedback in the way perhaps you as a leader want to gift it. So it's being really mindful about where that person is at the time that you offer the feedback. And that's to your point, Michelle, when you can own your own feedback,
Mm,
that is such an empowering state to be. And that is the first, I think, step in making feedback really effective and such a learning opportunity for you.
mm. And I think it really, when you receive feedback, if you can just take a moment to notice how you receive that feedback, that
Yeah.
is a telltale sign of how far you are on that journey of self development. Because if you immediately you can get a bit defensive because it can sting and it really hurts. But if you are still there, like the next day, in terms of justifying and projecting, then maybe you need to have a bit of some self reflection on you know what is it about that feedback that is making me feel this way.
Yeah, and what's coming up for you, Michelle? That's
Yeah.
absolutely spot on. I think it is a true reflection of your level of emotional intelligence and your ability, to expand your level of awareness when you can receive feedback, but not get defensive and fight and flight. Like you're not getting into a stress response. So I want to explore different methods to like transform the feedback into really actionable learning opportunities, because this is what makes the difference when you can put it into those practical, real life examples for you. So
Mm,
I want to share five with you. And the first one is it hinges on trust. Like trust is really created when you feel as though someone has your best interest at heart. And that's what you said before, Michelle. Like you actually feel safe enough to actually open up, be vulnerable to actually receive that. And then you can observe how reliable they are and they demonstrate that they know what they're doing. It all adds up to trust. And that's not something that just really happens overnight for most people. Sometimes it takes time. So trust is a little bit of credibility, it's reliability, it's that intimacy, vulnerability. Like there are so many elements of trust, but it really does hinge on trust. The second one, it's a habit. in order to receive habit. Like, get into the habit of inviting feedback. Like,
Mm.
as a team, you can even do it. Like at the end of a team meeting, if we were to rate ourselves from 1 to 5, how would we rate that meeting? If we were to, ramp it up a notch, what would be the one thing that we could be doing? And when you can ask, that's the bonus. When you ask for feedback, it's far more effective than when it's unsolicited. Because remember, when we were looking at the neuroscience of brain activity, the same neural pathways are highlighted or activated when someone says, "Can I give you feedback?" Because they're kind of like ready to brace themselves. So, really important. So, the third one, it has to be forward focused. So,
Mm.
feedback stings when it highlights your mistakes and shortcomings and your failings. Feedback that helps you potentially to grow and is forward focused and is solution oriented, that's when you can do something with it. And it really provides a clear target to shoot for more, like really expand and grow. And then the fourth one is have a feedback framework. And Michelle, what's our feedback framework?
Oh, the SBIN model.
Yeah, yeah.
So the SBIN model, it's describing the situation. And yesterday at that meeting when we were all together, and you cut Sally off a couple of times, so that's describing the situation. And then the next one is the behavior. So what is the behavior that you actually observed? And so here is what I saw. So you're describing the behavior, and then once you've done that, then just sit for a while and think about, okay, so what is you know create a little bit of space for that person just to receive that. And then it's really about, so do you want to do the next two, Jan?
Yeah, so you've got the situation, behavior, and the impact. So the impact of that behavior, that communication has on the team, on you, on your reputation, on the people who were in the room, stakeholders, and then the N is the next steps. Leave someone with what they could be doing extra, or like in the future. So SBIN is a great framework to have, and if everyone has a framework to actually talk about feedback, you're more likely to ask for it because you've actually communicated how you like to receive it. And then finally, Michelle, I think a really simple feedback framework is keep doing this, stop doing this, start doing this. And if you want to receive that feedback, ask, what can I continue to do, what can I start doing, and what do I need to stop doing? Like, really simple, because you want people to be able to give you a really specific answer that is, I don't know, targeted to what you need right
Yeah,
now.
actionable. You can do something with it. You can measure it. You can compare it to before. Without a doubt, that's I think and that's the secret sauce at the end of the day in terms of the feedback. Can I do something with this information that somebody's given me?
That's right. And then the fifth one is it takes practice. Like anything, like you get better is when you do it and you get feedback. Like, they're the two elements that create high performance. And so there's no better way to develop your feedback skills than practice. And I promise it gets easier. However, giving feedback is not only a skill to practice, it takes practice to receive that feedback as well. So there are five key considerations, and they're real actionable. And maybe just start with one of those, like really learn the framework. Perhaps think of someone that you do trust, and perhaps, have a discussion with them.
So, when I'm coaching clients sometimes, and this is an issue for them, it is difficult to, flex and start to practice in the workplace. So I say pick a non-threatening situation. So you get a really bad coffee or something at the coffee shop. That is a perfect opportunity for you to start practicing giving feedback. Could I give you some feedback about the coffee that blah blah blah, something like that, and just hear how it sounds. You know what I mean? Coming out of your mouth. So use those non-threatening situations to practice and flex this muscle, because it does require practice and it does require reflection in order for you to get better at it.
Mm. Yeah. And I just wanted to share another story. And this happened only last week. So there was a leader, they were having a performance discussion, and the person who was having that they were having a discussion with, the leader preempted what this person was going to say because they'd been having, one-on-one conversations, and the performance or the quality of work that this person was handing in wasn't at the level that was expected in this particular team. And they knew that there was going to be a bit of, backwards and forwards. So we used the SBIN model for that. And at the end of the conversation, the leader absolutely made some space for that person to give them self feedback. And actually, I think they started with that. So if you were to give yourself feedback, thinking about the last 3 month period and the work that you've been submitting, what would you say? And they actually started with that. And I think that's a really healthy way because it's actually empowering people. And you, as a leader, get an understanding of where there is
Love it.
alignment. Because
Yes.
when there is alignment, jump in on that. Like really focus on where you agree, and then you can start to wield in other elements to the feedback. So, Michelle, do you want to just talk about, a pivotal insight that successful feedback has had, or about the delivery?
Yeah. So, I'll think personally, Jen, at the beginning of COVID, we started to do a lot of work online, and we had a few people wanting to come in and just look at what we were doing, other facilitators. And a facilitator gave me some feedback about me nodding my head every time you said something and I agreed with it. It was like, and I think it was, what was the phrase? It was like one of those nodding dolls on the
Oh,
sitting on the back of the car. And I went, and yeah, and as soon as I heard it, it was written there. Oh gosh, there was a real sting because it hurt, you know. However, I know for a fact that that person wasn't doing it to bring me down. They were doing it in the spirit of, seeing there was an opportunity for me to do better. So ting, yep, big tick for that. But equally for me, it was like once I got over that initial, ego, whatever it is, then I thought, yes, there is something to that. And that's probably why it did sting a little bit. And then as a result, of it being given in the spirit of wanting to improve performance, received in the spirit of wanting to improve performance. Almost every time I get online now and we're talking and inside I'm going, yes, Jen, yes, Jen. I try and just hold myself back. And that has been quite pivotal actually for me. And it was it was both those things coming together that really made the difference.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that now. And so, I really want to reinforce the idea that effective learning really hinges on how we approach feedback.
Mm.
And I wanted to, again, just share a couple of tips about how to approach feedback. So, first of all, slow down, like take note. Listen for understanding as opposed to wanting for it just to get over with, like really lean in and be curious. The second is reflect, or at least brainstorm how you can use this information. Like, how are you going to apply it? How can you evaluate the information? Like, evaluate it carefully. Now, if you're not in a position to do that with the person, get a colleague, get a friend, but I think it's worthwhile having a neutral tone and then brainstorming how you could use the feedback that you've received. Be appreciative of the opportunity to actually receive feedback because it actually does take a lot of effort for someone to think about it, reflect, give it maybe a specific example, whether it's timely, especially if they're kind of, ticking all those boxes, and then follow up with the person who actually gifted you the feedback, especially if it is someone that you know, like, and trust, and that you want to enhance your relationship with. Tell them how you've used it, how you're applying it, like where are you on track and off track. And so again, the fifth is just be curious, try not to judge or make assumptions about why that person is giving you that feedback at this particular time, and all those things, because a lot of people don't even know themselves. So I think it's really important not to assume. And then the sixth one is make sure that you repeat back the constructive and positive feedback that you received to yourself, because we're so wired to look at what's wrong, what's missing, and we can talk quite severely to ourselves. So it really, and every cell in our body is listening to that. So I think it's really important that you coach yourself in a really constructive way and repeat what feedback you were given that is constructive and that was supportive and that was makes you kind of like be proud of your achievements.
Yeah, and that's the thing, try not to take it personally, because even though you were the person that displayed that behavior or messed up or didn't quite, reach the mark, it's not you. All right. It was a moment in time. There were all those other factors. So, yeah, just go, lightly on yourself. It's a little bit of information from someone. How am I going to use it? Because without a doubt, Jam, we have seen it. People who do not get any feedback do not improve. It's the people who do get feedback and, of course, do something with it. They are the ones that make all the difference to your career and to the organization. So like you said, it is a gift.
Mm.
Absolutely. So we really encourage people who are listening to this to share their thoughts, ideas, experiences on giving and or receiving feedback. And if you've got any sort of comment about things that you're interested in, let us know. Jan and I have been around for a very long time working with hundreds of individuals, leaders and teams, and we would love to share that with you.
Peace out.
If you found that video useful, then you'll be sure to find this one useful as well.